Hello, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Kojay's Corner with your boy Kojay right here. And this episode, we are continuing talking about Palestine, keeping the conversation going, spreading awareness. So I do appreciate you taking the time to lend me your ears, open your minds, and hopefully open your hearts as well to everything we're going to talk about. I have a really special guest I'm really excited to bring to the show and hear her stories. And before we get into that, I am blessed with a co-host. I do have Heena Lotus returning to the channel as my co-host. Welcome, Heena. How you doing?
Hey, I'm doing well. It's a pleasure to be back. I'm super humbled. I know it's been a while, but I think, thank you for the opportunity. I'm always grateful for you.
Thank you for being here. It's only been an episode ago. So thank you for coming right away back. So without further ado, the guest of honor who we will be talking to and listening to and hearing full stories of her experiences in occupied Palestine. This is a friend of mine, fellow activist. I'm gonna waste no time, bring her to the show. This is Gigi. Welcome to the show, Gigi. How you doing?
Salam alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum. Walaikum salam. Thank you. So we've been planning this for a minute since the first time I saw you at a protest banner drop, and I would like you to introduce yourself to the audience and tell us, like, what inspired you to get into activism, and or whichever happened before. When did you find out about Palestine, and what motivated you to do what you do, to speak up and do so many great things?
Well, thank you, first of all, for the kind introduction. I appreciate it. My interest in this really was rooted in my fascination with Egypt as a kid. And I decided that I wanted to study the Arabic language in college just out of pure linguistic interest. I have had no interest in politics for a long, long time until fairly recently. And I still have so much to learn. But it started out with an interest in the Arabic language, which I studied at university for 3 years, and had a lifelong dream of going to Egypt, which did not come to fruition until October 3rd, 2023.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
My plane landed in Cairo for the beginning of a 3.5 week vacation, 4 days before the Hamas attack. And I was getting texts from friends back here in the States and, oh, are you okay? And I was staying actually with local people. I was not in a hotel. And I assured them that the attack had happened far enough away geographically that there was no physical danger to me, but that political tensions were definitely running high based on conversations I had with my hosts. Because, of course, having been in Egypt only 4 days, I really had no point of comparison at that point of what the political situation had been. So,
And this is your first time ever in the Middle East, period.
Correct. I had been to Australia, Canada, Mexico, but I'd never been across the Atlantic Ocean. So it was definitely a unique experience in that respect. And I have to admit, I was very, very ignorant. Now, of course, I knew the expression occupied territories. I knew who Yasser Arafat was. I recognized his photo from when I was younger, but I really didn't know any of the politics again. And I was so ignorant that when I was telling my friends about being in Egypt when the Nova Festival attack happened, the terminology I was using was I was in Egypt when Hamas pulled their crap, because I didn't really understand. Now I make what I think is a fair comparison. They're not equal, of course, never equal, but the comparison I make now is that October 7th is basically the Palestinians' version of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising in 1943. And anybody who would say, well, what about October 7th? I would turn around and say, well, what about the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising? Do you think that was justified? So that's how strongly I feel about it now. And when I was a kid and I learned about the Trail of Tears, I hated being an American. When I learned about the Holocaust, I hated that I had German ancestry. And now, again, I'm kind of I'm very ashamed to be American, because we are basically making this whole thing possible. And don't call it a war, it's a slaughterhouse. It's not a war, because it's not two sides fighting evenly, even remotely. So back to answering your question, though. So I was in Egypt when it happened, and I met a guy from Libya who lives in Toronto, and we exchanged phone numbers and hung out a couple times before we both left to come back to North America. And he was posting clips of protests that he was going to in Toronto. And that's what really inspired me to start getting into it and learning and reading and researching. And I had just come out of a pretty unpleasant employment situation and found myself completely unemployed in mid-June of last year. But my favorite band was touring, and I have been what's called a street teamer for 30 years for this band. And I definitely shifted the energy that I've been doing with my street teaming for all that time into my activism. I kind of lost my focus with the band, and I'm grateful for the community that I have there, and I'm grateful for the music. I spent 15 years in the music industry as well, some time ago. But now my energy is all in the activism. So when the tour finished, because I traveled to several cities to see them play in other time zones as well as where I live, I found actions to go to and started going and talking to people and learning. And among the things that I found on Instagram was an agency called International Solidarity Movement, which you may know. Rachel Corrie was with them in their early days, and she was martyred. And I am probably butchering her name, but Ayşenur Egeyi, the Turkish American woman who was martyred last year right around this time, she was not an inspiration for me because I was already in the application process when she was martyred. But that's who I wound up going with for my first trip to Palestine, which started in mid-February of this year.
Wow.
Can I ask a question? I don't mean to interrupt you. If there are people who are potentially interested, are you still able to apply? And if so, what is the application process?
Oh, absolutely. ISM is very much in need of volunteers because the settler violence in the West Bank has escalated so badly within this calendar year. And their work is all in the West Bank. They're kind of, I can't speak totally to what they do, and I may be misrepresenting some information. I will say that. But I get the idea that they're kind of based in Ramallah, and that the long-term core Palestinian people who organize the volunteer stuff from the ground in Palestine live in or near Ramallah. So the work is primarily, they have 4 locations. When I went, there were 3 locations plus Ramallah, which is kind of like a home base, like I said. And training is done there as soon as volunteers arrive to prepare for their work. The 3 locations other than Ramallah are the North Jordan Valley, which is very rural, very agricultural, sheep herding, that kind of thing. Masaf Hurriyata, which is probably a more familiar term to people who are paying attention because the film No Other Land was based in the settler activity and the demolitions of Masaf Hurriyata, which is a collection of villages which is just being decimated daily. And then the 3rd location is an urban area called Al Khalil, which is the Arabic name for the city the western name of the city that may be more familiar to listeners on the whole is Hebron.
Mm.
Same city, two names. One is Western, one is Arabic. Jerusalem also has an Arabic name, which many people don't know. I didn't know either. The Arabic name for Jerusalem is Al-Quds. So it's all kind of mingled together. So I started my work in the North Jordan Valley, in the rural area, doing what's called protective presence. That's where internationals, primarily Americans and Europeans, I met one Australian during my time, but I didn't meet anybody from South America or other parts of Africa. People are welcome to apply from anywhere in the world, but there just weren't any people there from those geographic regions while I was there.
How many people were among the group when you were there?
My particular volunteer group came in for the training in the middle of February, and we were 8, 5 Europeans, 3 Americans. But and they do their training, their on the ground training every 2 weeks. So the group after us was 4 people, but there were different issues and none of them wound up staying after their training. The group after that was also 4 people and only 1 stayed and 3 had issues or left, or, that's their story to tell, not mine. And then the third group that came after me was, I want to say 11. So all 3 locations were hurting for new blood at that point, and we all got new people, and that was good. So it's different. It just depends how many people show up, and because each person who chooses to go over there and test the waters and do the training and ideally stay and do the work, they choose their own arrival dates based on when the training is available. So it could be 1 person, it could be 20 people. It's just random how the individual people choose their travel dates.
Wow.
Yeah. So Jordan Valley at that time we had as many as 14 people at a time. Masaferyata, it fluctuated greatly. The number of people fluctuated greatly. And then El Khalil was and remains a fairly small number because the protective presence is so much more in demand and so much more demanding, I guess you could say. It's physically more demanding, it's emotionally more demanding, a lot more stress. You deal with settler violence, and there's almost always military and or police violence immediately following the settler violence, because that's just how it works. That's how the system works. There is, when there's trouble and somebody calls the police because there's illegal stuff going on, imagine that. The police will show up, and instead of calling off the perpetrators of the violence, they protect and stand by and keep the victims from fighting back, which is not smart anyway, because the settlers are usually armed and the Palestinians aren't. But the police will say, we'll file a report. That's their response to the victims, file a report. And then they don't do anything, or they encourage or participate or whatever. So there's a lot less sleep to be had because of rapid response calls in Masaferyata and the Jordan Valley, because the settlers can show up anytime, day or night. And, these are big chunks of farmland with crops and sheep pens and the families' tents that they live in. And the settlers show up whenever they feel like it with weapons and ATVs tearing up the land. They'll cut the water lines, they'll cut the power lines, they set cars on fire, they dump cement into the wells, they poison and kill the sheep, they steal the sheep, they poison the water. They do everything they can to make the Palestinians want to just throw up their hands in despair and walk away because of the land grab. They want everybody to get so discouraged that they just walk away and surrender their land. Now, I actually witnessed this in real time, in my face, during my time in the Jordan Valley. There was a compound. There's really no other way to describe it. I'm guessing there were maybe 20 adults and 10 kids, 3 flocks of sheep, goats, donkeys, chickens, geese, cats, and dogs, and God knows how many tents. And they basically have the toilets there in the rural areas it looks kind of like an outhouse or like a porta potty, but you don't actually, there's no toilet to sit on. You have to squat over a hole in the ground. And then there's like a tube underneath that, takes it away, or they clean it out or whatever. But it's a standalone stall as a place to, take care of your business, so to speak.
Yeah. This is true.
So this compound was on a large chunk of land. Oh, they also had a crop of peas that were below the area where all the tents were and where people were living. So I was assigned there one night with 2 other male volunteers. And the next morning, now they had seen some settler activity, but the next day there was settlers driving their ATVs around, scaring the sheep and driving right through the crop of peas. And that was the last day before the outpost was set up. The very next day, 3 settlers pitched a tent and brought a generator and a water tank and set it up on the hill. And within 5 days, the entire compound was gone. They dismantled all the animal pens, all the tents, and took things away 20 kilometers away. Now, they had family. They had somewhere to go. But a lot of these people don't. They're just driven off of their land by these terroristic settlers. And luckily, these people had somewhere to go, and they were able to transport all of their sheep and all of their tents and their animals to go somewhere. But the crop was ruined, and the hassle of moving everything. And I don't know what's on that land now, but I'm sure that it's a settlement. I'm sure that they're starting to build houses and shit. Oh, sorry. I'm sorry for the language.
No, don't worry. My channel is very PG-13 rated R,
Okay.
It's adults, so it's okay. Don't worry. I forgot to mention that,
I'm so glad you're bringing this up, though. And the reason I say that is we have to remember when in the media, we're always hearing about October 7th. We have to understand that, and we all have our opinions on resistance and things of that nature, especially on this channel. But I think at the end of the day, you have to remember that the media, Western media, has convinced, right? I would say no longer the masses, but at one point the masses, that Hamas was, the issue, which is why they're doing everything they are in Gaza. A lot of people don't understand that the West Bank has no Hamas presence. It's not connected to October 7th in any capacity. It has a completely separate government, the Palestinian Authority. And the president, from my understanding, or, the prime minister of that region actually works very heavily with Israel. So any settler violence that is going on, and this has been occurring far before October 7th, right? It has nothing to do with Hamas. It has nothing to do with October 7th. And so we have to understand that if people are going to bring up the October 7th card and the Hamas card, which obviously we have our opinions, and that's a debate for a different day. But at the end of the day, there is zero, absolutely zero legal or political recourse for justifying what, the settlers are doing. I would say this also is applicable to Gaza, but what's going on in the West Bank has nothing to do with what happened, on October 7th. And I don't think a lot of people conceptualize that. So I'm kind of glad that you were there firsthand. This isn't now propaganda or Pallywood or anything of that nature that you're discussing.
Yeah. And these people are so kind and generous and open-hearted, and they're so grateful for the internationals who come. So I arrived in mid-February, and the first 2 weeks I was in the Jordan Valley was just protective presence work. And the second 2 weeks was the first half of Ramadan. And they feed you like there's no, I mean, because the West Bank is not starving the way Gaza is. But I seriously, the words that I heard most often are eat, eat. And they stuff you. They just stuff you with food. But, you would show up for your assignment in the evening and have coffee and tea with your family that you're protecting. And then they would go to sleep and you'd keep watch at least until the early hours of the morning. As it went on and things started escalating, some families would request that the volunteers sleep in shifts so that one person was at least always awake, because you really couldn't predict when these, terrorizing settlers would show up and do things. So,
and what's the plan as being awake? Like, is it as an alert system so everyone can wake up and react in the right amount of time, or was there a plan in set up,
well,
just in case this happened?
Here's something that's very important to understand about ISM. It is a Palestinian-based agency, and one of the number one rules, if not the number one rule, is that the Palestinians call the shots. It is their homeland. We were protecting their families, their land, their animals, their dignity. We're standing in solidarity with. They get to always call the shots. So the idea of staying awake, like, let's say there's a scenario and there's settlers creeping around or whatever, the first thing that the volunteers would do is call the family and say, what do you want us to do? Do you want to call the police? Do you want us to chase them away? Do you want to come after them? They always make their own decisions. The volunteers do their bidding. Yes. So that's very important to understand as well. So if anybody's got I'm going to go save the world, save the Palestinian world complex, ISM is not the place to do it, because the Palestinians always come first and they make the calls.
I like that. I agree with that. That's the way it should be.
Yeah.
And what was, after you got your training, what was your first experience or where you had to go to offer your help?
My first assignment was, so I arrived, the training was on, I want to say, a Tuesday and Thursday. I can't remember what days of the week it was, and it has since changed. ISM has changed a few of their policies to accommodate the escalating situation. So a few things are different now from when I was there in February, and I can't necessarily speak to them, but I know that there are a few differences. I was assigned to a place where we came to the property, checked in with the family, had tea, and then they actually had a whole tent with a few cots and thin mattresses and blankets for the volunteers to sleep on. And the outhouse was right behind, one of the outhouses was right behind that tent. So we came in and basically went to sleep early, but then also got up early, had a huge Palestinian breakfast, and then went out with the shepherd to help protect the sheep. And it was difficult for me because I hate hiking. And,
I get it.
I'm alone here. I hike on my own then.
No, bicycling is
I
my
wouldn't think
thing.
that. Oh, I see. Bicycling. Because I'm like, you're always killing it on the streets, when we do our banner drops and our protests, because, you're usually there to like almost all the other ones I'm at.
Yeah, no, I'm a bicyclist.
All right.
And physically, the hike, here in the States and probably in Europe, I don't know, I didn't grow up in Europe, but when we think of shepherds and sheep herding, we envision pastures, flat green fields full of grass. Well, that ain't nothing like what shepherding is like there. The Holy Land is hilly and rocky. And even though I knew that on some level, I grew up Christian, And I've seen photos, but for some reason I didn't quite put together that that's where they were going to graze the sheep. And it was very difficult. The place where I was assigned the first night was one of the most physically challenging locations, as I became familiar with other locations from that assignment area. And I asked not to be sent back there because another rule with ISM is that you always work with a partner, sometimes two if there's an odd number. It could be a group of three, but always you never go anywhere alone on an assignment. And because of my lack of sure-footedness, I would have slowed down my partner. Like if there had been problems, I couldn't run.
Oh, I see.
I have huge feet and chronic pain in my hips, and it was just not a good match. So I went on some easier assignments, and I wound up kind of becoming the house mom at the volunteer house. So I cooked dinner more often than other people did, and I would take the trash to the dumpster and take the composting out to the field and feed the dog and cat and sweep the house when everybody else was sleeping during the day. But I still felt like I wasn't really pulling my weight. I felt like everyone else was doing the hard work and putting themselves in danger. And it did not feel good to feel that way. Like I wasn't doing my fair share. I mean, people were nice to me and said, "Oh, but we do appreciate what you're doing. And who else wants to take the trash out?" But it just didn't seem right. So I chose, after a call went out from the one volunteer that was in Al Khalil and was planning to leave to go back to their country relatively soon. They posted in the communication channel and said, "Somebody please come to Al Khalil because the location, there's no other volunteer here, and when I leave, I don't want it to fall by the wayside." And I'm a city girl. I've lived in 5 different states and 8 cities, and I'm an urban person. So I took the call and I chose to transfer to Al Khalil, and it was great. I fell in love with the city. I made lots of local friends. I became very well acquainted with several other volunteer agencies in addition to ISM who operate in or out of Al Khalil. And it was great. I mean, I was collecting phone numbers from local Palestinians, and I still, like this morning, I had an hour-long conversation with my friend who has a souvenir shop down in Old City. I still keep in touch with them frequently. So Al Khalil was a very good call, and I made local friends, and I also had the incredible honor of meeting Basil al-Adra, who was the guy in No Other Land.
Wow.
Yeah, he's very, very reserved, very quiet. People who know him always use the word shy to describe him. And I just think he's an incredible human being. And I mentioned a little while ago that I spent some time in the music industry, and the one person that I got really, really gobsmacked by and couldn't talk to, I mean, I don't really get starstruck. I've met people like Sting and I don't know. I can't think of now. I can't think of who they. But I've met famous people, Kiefer Sutherland, whatever. But the one person I could not talk to was Johnny Cash. I was just standing there looking at him, going, "Oh my God, that's Johnny Cash standing in front." In my head, I'm saying this, and I was just so flabbergasted. And that's how Basil made me feel. Like, oh my God, that's Basil Adra.
He brought you the cash.
But it was also kind of fun because the screening of No Other Land that he came to do a Q&A for at the Cultural Center in Al Khalil.
Oh, wow.
So this was still during Ramadan, and we'll get back to Ramadan in a minute.
Okay.
There was like kind of a meet and greet before the screening, and then a Q&A after the screening. And I was sitting right across from him in a long, narrow room. So he was like, 8 feet away from me. And at one point, when he wasn't talking to anybody else, I leaned in and I said, I live in Los Angeles, and your Oscar was the best thing the Academy did this year.
True. I agree to this day.
And he just kind of smiled a little bit, like it made him uncomfortable, because that's not, they were not about winning the Oscar. They wanted to tell their story.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, just a really nice human being. And then there's another guy who's in several scenes whose name is Hamdan Bilal. He's also in No Other Land. And when you read the credits, so those two were the Palestinians on the directorial and production team. And then there were 2 Israelis, Yuval Abraham, and I can't remember, the other one was a woman. I can't remember her name though. But I also met Hamdan Bilal. He lives in another village in Masafariata named Susia. And you guys probably know this, but not many listeners may know this, is that a few weeks after the Oscars, he was attacked in his home in the middle of the night, dragged out, beaten, needed medical attention, but was detained for over 24 hours while he needed medical attention for no other reason that he was telling the truth and exposing, this horrible terrorist regime for what it is. And I had the distinct honor of meeting him as well after he recovered from his injuries. And he's talkative. Basil's not very talkative, but Hamdan is talkative, and just both very wonderful human beings, and a huge honor for me. So yeah, any questions about that before I go back to Ramadan?
Oh, would you guys talk about? Oh, you go first. You're more...
No,
No, you go first.
The first thing I was gonna say is, I know you said I didn't, pull my weight, and that actually that touched my heart, because I felt like at the end of the day, we all have different roles. Like, I'm very similar to you. I don't think hard labor or hiking or being, even though they will say that, like, physical strength is not my strong suit. And I think, not to bring gender roles into it, but I think a lot of women would identify with that. But the fact that you were able to cook and clean and take the trash out and have a helping hand, you were bringing this like divine feminine energy, right? And you were really helping them when it comes to the labor of love. Like, it's very emotional to run a household, to provide food and provision and things of that nature. I think as human beings, when we watch all the suffering going on in Gaza and what's going on in the West Bank, we think it's purely physical labor and the fight and the blood, sweat, and tears that we have to put into being part of the resistance or the protection or anything of that nature. But I think allowing, these people to rest when it comes to things like food and eating and cleaning and, household labor, I think is just as important. Think about how psychologically and emotionally hard it is for these people to just function day by day, right? Like, you were in a volunteer position, but this is their life. This is their autobiography, living in constant fear of animals being hurt, plants and agriculture being affected, losing family members, losing their homes. And you were able to provide food at a time when, they wouldn't have had the help otherwise. So I think it's beautiful what you did, and you should never undermine, your role in what you're doing and going out of your way. Like, I think a lot of people in the US, and I'm not undermining it, but, we do the podcasting and we do the protests and we do, like the retweeting and things of that nature. And that's important. You physically went all the way there and, even you could say like your life on the line, right? Like, there's a lot of protections that you yourselves don't have because you're providing protection for people that are oppressed. So I want to commend you for that first and foremost.
Well, thank you.
No, of
100%.
course. When people talk down about the beautiful things they do, it gets to me, right? So I wanted to say that first and foremost. The second question, or not the question, the first question though that I had was, when you were there, now, you kind of explained that the police essentially had a role in essentially helping the settlers, right? They were not helping the Palestinians or the natives in any capacity. What legal or political like jurisdiction or protection or rights were you guys able to have? I know Palestinians were the ones that were kind of calling the shots, as they should, but is there any sort of extra protection that you guys could give? Now, I know it's not going to be politically or legally like symmetrical to a government or the police or military, but what rights, I guess, were you guys able to exercise there? I don't know if that's like a complex question.
I understand what you're asking, and I'm not sure there's an answer to it. It's like if there were things, we never talked about it or it never came into play as far as taking initiative on other things outside of the protective presence and documenting. That's another thing that is super important with ISM is getting your camera out and taking photos and videos and posting and getting it out there to the world so that they do see that the Palestinians are not the violent ones, that they are not the perpetrators of the violence. They're not the ones stealing sheep or, destroying things or whatever. So the witnessing and sharing the footage is also super important. Now, it's also gotten worse, progressively worse since I was there, where settlers a story that I heard, I had crossed paths after I got to Al Khalil. I crossed paths just for a few days with a 72-year-old man from Italy who has been in and out of Palestine like a dozen times over the years for solidarity. And he's made friends down in Masafer Yatta, and he's always got a place to stay as a guest if he's not doing the volunteering. But there was a settler incident where I don't remember how many volunteers there were at the time. I knew him and two other ones that were there that I remember. There may have been other people I'm just not remembering right now, or I had never met them because I didn't work in Masafer Yatta. I went there to do tasks on my second trip to Palestine, but I wasn't with ISM the second time I went. I was with Hebron International Resource Network. And the story that came through that we heard about was that the settlers came in and were, creating chaos and damaging people and property, and the volunteers were taping, and the settlers stole a laptop, cameras, and literally snatched the 72-year-old man's phone out of his hand and broke it. They just have no regard for anything. They have no regard for anything.
I think in a way, this is proving like you're not going to destroy evidence or hurt media or journalists or kill animals or like affect the land if you are innocent, right? So I think in a lot of ways, doing this is proving their guilt, right? You're only going to hide the evidence if you're a criminal.
Yeah,
like all their actions and reactions to everything everyone's doing is telling in itself.
There's a sign that I've seen at a couple of different protests around the area, and it says, "Land you have to kill for is not yours. Land you are willing to die for is." And that's pretty profound. Yeah, it's pretty profound. But to kind of piggyback on your question, Heena, of the, what other rights do you have? I'm a white girl with light hair, light eyes, and an American passport. So I'm, less likely to get into trouble, so to speak. But I know this is going to sound weird, but I wasn't scared. It was a terrifying situation, but my level of contempt for these people is so high that I was more angry and contemptuous than afraid. But this is a true story that happened in the middle of the night in I think it was my third week in the Jordan Valley. Now, almost everybody had gotten this really nasty respiratory infection and was sick for weeks Alhamdulillah, I was not one of them. I never got the respiratory infection. But there was one night where there was a Dutch woman who was very sick and stayed home with the infection. And then there was a very young American guy who he had other issues, and was also sleeping a lot and not going out on assignments because he didn't feel good, but it wasn't the infection. So those two stayed home and did not go out on assignment one night. And then the man who built the house for the refugees was there. Refugees, volunteers. God, I can't believe I said that. So there was the Dutch woman, the American guy, and the Palestinian owner of the house. I was out on assignment with this lovely young German guy who he's like 6'7" and has a very soft voice and a thin frame, but he's still 6'7", you know. Now he had had the experience of being bitten by a dog the second day we were there. He was in my volunteer group. So he was going every couple of days to Jericho for rabies shots. Keep that in the back of your mind as I tell this story.
Okay.
So I was with him. His volunteer name is Khalid, and we had been assigned to a place where the family asked us to sleep in shifts. And we had the car. We had dropped everyone else off at their locations, but we had the car. So I took the first watch. He was sleeping, and about 1:30 in the morning, my phone rang, and it was our location coordinator. And she said, "Wake him up right now, get in the car and go back to the house, but don't pull into the driveway. Park a little ways away and walk," because the Palestinian owner of the house had to take the American to a medical clinic for his issue and reported to our coordinator saying someone needs to go back because the Dutch woman was there alone and there was military in the neighborhood. This is 1:30 in the morning, okay? And there's no question that the settlers had targeted the house. There's just no question. So we were told, don't pull into the driveway and prepare a story in case you run into them while you're coming back. So we decided that our story was that we were both tourists and that we had previously met in Jerusalem and decided to travel together, and that we were coming back from Jericho. Okay. So we get about a quarter of a mile from the house. We park the car and start walking toward the house, and there's 4 military jeeps blocking the road between us and the house, and at least a dozen guys with rifles. And the whole point of being there was to get to the Dutch woman. And, what were we going to do? We weren't going to go back to the car and drive away. So we started walking toward this blockade. And this is like a small farming town, really small farming town, quiet. And as we were walking, the soldiers yelled something in Hebrew. And Khalid said, "I don't speak Hebrew," but they didn't hear him, and we kept walking. They yelled at us in Hebrew again, and he said, "I don't speak Hebrew." And then I heard one of them cock the rifle. Now, Khalid told me later that he saw the red laser dot on his body. I may have had one, but I didn't notice because I was just like hyper alert and watching what was going on. So after I heard the rifle being cocked, I yelled, "English!" Really loud. And they told us to stop where we were. They told us, "One of you come forward and one of you stay where you are." He went forward, I stayed. They told us to drop our bags on the ground. We dropped our bags. And then I couldn't hear what was going on with him, but I saw. So I did the same thing. They told him to unzip his jacket, pull it open, pull up his shirt, and turn around because they were looking to see if we were wearing guns. So we did that, and then they made him kneel down on the ground. And remember, this guy is 6'7". So he's kneeling, but they didn't make me kneel. And one soldier approached each of us, asked for our passports, examined the passports, took a photo of the passport, took a photo of our faces, and I have a feeling the one that took my passport didn't read English because he said, "What's your name?" And I said my name, the way it's written on my passport, but with a real, the underlying tone in my voice was dumbass, and then he said, "Well, where are you from?" And I said, "Well, the United States of America, but I currently live in California because I haven't lived in my birth city, which is 2 time zones away, in 40 years." I probably shouldn't have said that because I just gave away my age. But and the thing of all the things that happened, the one that I'm still kind of reeling is when dude handed me back my passport. I said thank you, and he actually said you're welcome. That threw me for a loop. Like,
maybe he's impressed by you.
Maybe.
I think he was showing off his English skills. That's how I kind of took it. His limited English skills.
Yeah. Either that or my saying thank you took him off guard and he just reacted. I don't know. But so they loaded their sorry asses and their weapons back into their Jeeps and drove. Sorry. I told you I would get back to the Jericho thing. So one of the things that I saw that was happening when Khaled was kneeling on the ground, but I couldn't hear, he was holding up a piece of paper in his right hand. And I had no idea what it was. And it turned out that it was his vaccination receipt from the hospital in Jericho. And our Palestinian host told us later that that's probably what kept us from being detained. Because it matched the story that we were coming back from Jericho.
So if something didn't add up, they would have automatically detained you guys.
I don't know automatically, but it probably would have been worse. Now, for the poor Dutch woman, it was worse. So they got in their Jeeps and drove away in the direction from which we had come, and we continued walking very slowly toward the house. But I'm sure they had night vision goggles and they knew exactly where we were going, So we got into the house, and this poor woman, while we were driving from our assignment location back to the house, they had broken into the house, kicked the door in, and interrogated the hell out of her. Who are you? Where are you from? Why are you here? What are you doing? How many people are here? Now, of course, she'd been asleep, and thank God she had all the right stuff on her bedside nightstand, like wadded up tissues and half-eaten bowls of food and medicine and whatever. But, they woke her up and said, who else is here? And she's like, well, there's a guy sleeping in the next room, because she didn't realize that they were gone. They had left while she was still asleep. So they're like, there's nobody in the next room. What are you talking about? And she's like, well, I don't know. You woke me up when you kicked the door in. And, they were saying, they took her photo of her passport too. And, what is your name? Who do you pay rent to? How did you find out about this place? Who do you call if the electricity goes out? If you're the only 2 people here, why is there so much luggage here? Who are the other people? Where are they from? Where are they right now? What are they doing? What are their names? Do they have any guns? And she was also told, if you don't come to the police station by 10 o'clock tomorrow morning, we're going to come back and arrest you. Now, the police station they told her to come to was 68 kilometers away in 48. So we had to round everybody up really early the next morning so that the car would be available to take her to the police station so she didn't get arrested. And unfortunately, the families that used volunteers for assistance with herding the sheep in the morning didn't get their help.
Because so they got her away, so the Palestinians were on their own, pretty much.
Yeah. Because we had to collect everyone with the car so that the car was available to take her to the police station. Yeah, so that was my worst run-in. I mean, once I got to Al Khalil, there's military, I would walk past settlement and checkpoints and yeah, there's just soldiers. I don't want to say everywhere because that's not true, but they could be at any time. Whereas, you know, in the rural areas, you never knew, and it was less frequent. Now it's worse. Things are escalating all over the place. And as horrible as this might sound, it's not meant to, but some people may take it the wrong way, is the flotillas and the famine and all of this stuff with Gaza and, of course, the continued bombing. It's horrible. There's no question it's horrible. But in a way, it has also served as a very calculated distraction to keep Western eyes on Gaza so that the terror can escalate for the Palestinians in the West Bank, and more land is being stolen, and more houses are being demolished, and more sheep are being stolen every day. And nobody's paying attention to that because the media is not covering it, because Gaza is, at least on the surface, so much more horrific because of the death toll. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so like since all the attention or whatever attention's on Gaza, West Bank is kind of, they're going crazy on West Bank, the settlers are.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Since it's like they're assuming, yeah, they're taking advantage that the eyes that are on Gaza, less eyes on West Bank, so let's just go crazy on West Bank.
Right.
Pretty
And
much what they're doing.
Now with this quote ceasefire unquote, and I was in Al Khalil.
Which they broke today.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, I never had any faith in it because I was in Al Khalil when the ceasefire was broken at the end of March, and my Palestinian friends in Al Khalil, I mean, we could hear the planes flying over all the time. We could hear the planes flying over, and the Palestinians would just kind of shrug their shoulders and go, "Oh, somebody's going to die in Gaza today." They're just resigned to it. It's not that they don't care; they just know that they can't do anything.
Dang.
But you know, something else that, sorry to say it, but it kind of pissed me off with the ceasefire thing in these last few days is there's, at least to our knowledge, and I would not be surprised if, because again, they're trying to, you know, eliminate Hamas. But I bet you there's no conditions in this quote ceasefire, quote peace agreement, peace plan, whatever Trump is calling it, that there's probably not one single provision for what's going on in the West Bank. And all that's remaining unchecked because nobody addressed it. And it just infuriates me.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's even, I mean, being into geopolitics, let me bring this angle into it too. I haven't read it in its entirety, but I do think you are correct in saying that there's no help or provisions or anything of that nature for the West Bank. And it, you know, it goes so far as to say all the countries who basically signed for the deal, a lot of the leaders have now come back and said, wait, I agreed to it thinking that, you know, the provisions and, you know, the certain clauses were X, Y, and Z, but when it was actually rolled out, none of that was true. So I think it may have been sold as, yes, this protects all of Palestine in its entirety. But, you know, when push comes to shove, I think a lot of provisions that people thought would be in there are actually not. And a lot of, you know, leaders are coming out and saying, wait, you know, and I still think for them to sign it was wrong, because let's be honest, anything that is brokered by the US is going to serve the US, right? It's going to serve the oppressor. It's going to serve Israel. You know, so it already, I think these countries signing towards it, I was like, okay, they're sellouts. But for them to sign it knowing they're selling out and then to come back and be like, no, wait, you know, there are bits and pieces that we were told would be in there. Now these clauses aren't, kind of goes to show exactly how shady and terrible, you know, the US and Israel are. And also we have to realize that anything that is fully brokered by the West that doesn't take into account, we have to remember the ceasefire did not take into account Palestinian voices and opinions and what, you know, they thought was necessary. It wasn't, there's a lack of legal and political symmetry. So I personally was not celebrating the ceasefire to begin with, you know, like, yes, maybe we can say, hey, we got breadcrumbs, but we've celebrated breadcrumbs for too long. When I think it comes to we have to ask for the entire pie. There's no breadcrumbs at this point. It's gone way too far.
Yeah. And they always leave out the Palestinian hostages that Israel has that they hold as prisoners. Like, there's a lot of things they're missing, and these ceasefire agreements, I don't know, to this point, they just seem like delay tactics. Or if they do work, it would aid the killers and the murderers, not the victims and the innocent. And because if they did care, our government wouldn't be vetoing all these good ceasefires that the UN comes up with.
Yeah.
For the most part.
Yeah.
And it's nerve-wracking.
I mean, I think this is just my take. Again, I am not into politics at all, but I think that the Gazans are so traumatized at this point that, you know, you see video clips on social media of, you know, children dancing and singing and adults singing praise to Allah and being all happy. And it just might be the depth of the trauma that makes them feel this way. But something that I've been saying all summer after coming back from my first trip is the only 6 words you need to know that this is so far from being over are, number 1, ethnic cleansing. Those are 2 words. Greater Israel. Those are another 2 words.
Mm-hmm.
We know that they think that that land belongs to them because of something in the Bible and, you know, whatever their cult teaches them. And they will never rest until they're defeated or they manage to, God forbid, kick all the Palestinians out or kill them all, which Samud, you know, the steadfastness, it's not going to happen. And now that the world has finally opened its eyes, I don't think it'll happen. But the other 2 words, and this is tying back to referring to the hostages, is I think, again, I'm not a politician. I don't study political science, but my take on it is that the terrorist regime of Israel and its leaders are holding the hostages hostage, the Israeli hostages hostage, because they want to keep perpetrating the cycle of fear and hatred against Palestinians.
Yes,
I would agree with that.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. I'm also not a politician, but I did take a hiatus for the past week. Kojay kind of knows, but most of the time, 99% of the time, I follow trade deals, agreements, and geopolitics like a hawk. I'm not going to say that I specialize in it or anything of that nature, but it is, you know, one of my strong suits. And I genuinely think that, you know, from the beginning, the hostages, quote unquote, being taken was in Israel's favor. And them being, and I'm talking about the Israeli ones, you know, that are, quote unquote, being held by Hamas. If they were to ever be released, it would be to the demise of everything that Israel and the Greater Israel Project stands for, as well as U.S. foreign policy. So I think a lot of people don't understand that. They kind of use the term hostages as bait, but there's actually it doesn't serve their purposes. We have to understand that everything that is going on is a byproduct of U.S. foreign policy. It's a byproduct of economic interests. And the hostages piece would then essentially say, okay, now any bombing that you see, not just in Gaza, not just everything going on in West Bank, but also what's going on in, you know, Syria and Lebanon and Yemen, goes on, and all these deals that are being brokered between these countries, they no longer have a place. Now the U.S., you know, foreign policy is coming out and saying we are the terrorists. As long as they can keep using the term, simply the term, not even the actuality, but the term hostages, they can continue everything that they're doing and the media will back them up. We all see through it, right? We see everything that's going on. We hear the stories, you know, we're humbled enough to, you know, interview people like you who have been there. But as long, you know, as far as the media goes and U.S. foreign policy goes, I think they're just using this as bait. That's all it is. It's a term that's being used as bait. And I don't think the hostages will ever be released per se, because the moment they are, this entire project is going to collapse. Seriously.
And that makes sense because every time there's a ceasefire from the U.S. that always gets broken by Israel. It just has that goal because having the hostages or the terrorists, that's like the hall pass. That's the excuse card to whether people buy it or not. That's what they have in paper to self-justify their actions of what's going on. And when you look at it, and the more people look at it, the more people are saying it on socials and other articles, is that like this is a deconstruction process for a reconstruction process. And even before this, in 2023, I saw like plans for a new Gaza by Israel and new houses to be built in northern Gaza. And then a year later, you see, okay, they're advertising you could buy stuff in northern Gaza and stuff and everything. And then the plan keeps getting different promotions, and even Trump being in on it, trying to promote it, and he wants some Trump towers and all that. It's like it's all blatant. But the power of the prejudice that they sell with the help of the media and other outlets like Fox News, CNN, they're all part of the media too. They're built that way. Even when Fox News was like sued like 15 years ago or whatever, I have to look it up. They even said that they are media, they're not news, and that's on record in law. So it's all advertising to this overall goal, so people just kind of accept it in in any shape or form. So the killing will continue. So just like as you said, like you think that the terrorist state of Israel doesn't want the hostages free. I totally believe that, because that's their excuse to keep doing all this stuff.
I know, and that. Oh, go ahead.
Magnitude. Oh, I apologize. No, I was just gonna say, if they really cared about the hostages, they would not be bombing, you know what I mean, with impunity to the magnitude that they have, right? Because it's obvious that if the hostages are quote unquote hidden throughout Gaza, to be bombing Gaza to the magnitude that they are, there's no
and halting aid going in because they have to eat too.
Correct. Yeah, no, that's actually a very, very good point. You know, and if you take a look at, you know, when they've bombed Iran, for example, right? That's a huge like hot topic. When they were bombing Iran, it was so strategic. And they were kind of showing their cards right then and there, because if they can strategically bomb Iran in very, very specific areas, why are they not able to do that in Gaza? Where they're like, well, we're not able to do X, Y, and Z, right? A lot of things that they say, it's like they show their cards every single time. And that's why they rely so heavily on, you know, like Western media and the outlets and, you know, the government and APAC. And, you know, I mean, the list goes on. And, you know, they rely on these things essentially because they know they're lying. They know that, you know, there's no justification. They themselves know it's a genocide, but they use all these different factions and interests to basically justify what they're doing. And thank goodness, like you said, the world is finally seeing through it. I mean, what's going on in Italy? I watched that and I'm just like, I hope Americans know that that level of civil disobedience is also available here. I don't think people are understanding that, which is why it's not being reported on to the magnitude that it should.
I was pretty disappointed in the turnout at the, well, I went to the, October 7th was on Tuesday, and then last year it was on a Monday. I think. It was not on a weekend though. And last year, the big protest started at Pershing Square in downtown LA, and it felt massive. You know, I looked around and I felt like there was probably at least 5, 6, 7, 8,000 people there. This year, I don't know if you want to use the word official, but the main protest started in front of the Israeli consulate in the west side of LA. And I was just terribly disappointed. It felt like it was a smaller turnout than last year rather than bigger.
I think that's fine, to be candid, because I think, you know, the system or empire, right? And this is like a greater or bigger topic. Empire relies on the hopelessness that we all feel, right? Because once we start feeling that hopelessness, we collectively start giving up, right? We're like, it's too late. We can't do anything, X, Y, and Z. When people start having that mentality and giving up, that's what allows the project and empire to continue oppressing. And so
Mm-hmm.
when we see people not showing up in, the same amount of numbers, that's what it is, right? The way that everything is being reported, they're, essentially saying, hey, there's no hope. It's too late. So people are like, well, what is me going to a protest going to do? That's the mentality. But that very thought that we end up having, where we see all these images and we feel sick to our stomach and we're like, there's nothing we can do. There's nothing we can do. Yes, we probably can't do as much as we would like, right? There's not a single person that's going to raise their hand and be like, I have done enough for Palestine, right?
Yeah.
Living outside of the
Yeah.
area.
Yeah.
Are there things that we can collectively do as much as possible and all play our role, right? However big or small? Yeah, absolutely. But it's that hopelessness that, there's nothing that I can personally do that's going to change anything that Empire relies on. And so I think that's why Kojay's Corner and all these different podcasts and, independent journalists and geopolitical analysts and people like you who are volunteering, these are the voices, these are the channels, these are the, the avenues that should be amplified, right? And that's what we need to understand. Because when people hear your story and what you went through and what you learned, I think they themselves start realizing, wow, if she could do all that, to the very bare minimum, I can go to this protest. To the very bare minimum, I can retweet something. To the very bare minimum, I can make a call to a representative, whatever, avenue that people decide to take.
Yeah.
But that's the problem. I think, when they repeatedly say, because even in the media, you'll hear it's too late. It's a stage 5 famine, X, Y, and Z. All these people have died. And, there's no, X, Y, Z that's going to happen. It's to create hopelessness. And it's by design. You're being forced to feel that way. So you give up. And when we give up, we have to understand, if Palestinians themselves are not giving up, who are we to give up?
Yeah. I'd like to.
We're very privileged.
Oh, yeah. That's an understatement, my friend. I'm looking for something that I want to read. You guys can keep talking for a second while I'm looking. If you.
Yeah, we need a new hope every day because I felt defeated a bunch of times. I even set back a bit, and I'm trying to replay this mantra in my head to like always show up. If there's no other way, like even blaming myself for I was too tired, didn't have enough gas money. It's like not enough as I get, as this continues on because I have this luxury. I have this house over my head, so the bare minimum, I gotta keep trying. And I do have these episodes pop out sparingly, not trying to promote myself, but I am trying to do everything I can, and it does. The hopelessness sits in a lot more often than I care to admit that I'm admitting right now. So it's really, really difficult when that happens, and I'm always looking for a new hope. And I will say the thing that does spark the hope is when I talk to my fellow activists like Gigi and you, Heena, people who know. When we keep this conversation going, it like does inspire that new hope to go, all right, I'm not going to give up. And we can't give up, because I don't understand how people could see this as any kind of trend or something cool. What's so cool about being sad every night? There's not like a week or maybe 4 days that goes by without me crying some point in some shape or form. Like I saw footage of a child from today's massacre, which, by the way, for those of you who do not know, because this is recorded, it's October 9th in the evening as we're recording this, when the ceasefire was broken earlier today that we got word of. There's this kid and it looked like under their jaw was shot. Like sometimes bullets, when they either go in, they go through, or they pass and disrupt a lot. And then you can see underneath the child's jaw into his mouth here, and they're trying to help him with what little they have, and he's still alive. It's just, I see that often, and I don't know what I'm getting at, but it's a type of, it's a lot. There's nothing cool about it. The reason why we say and do what we can to help is out of this frustration of injustice going on in a world by superpowers that claim to be about justice. And it's so blatant. It's so on the face. I can't understand why people all don't rise up. But as we talk and I'm looking at this, there's another level of hopelessness or lack of empathy that many other people have. Because when I talk to other people who do now understand what's going on, even without talking to me, some of them is just like, yeah, it's messed up there. They accept that it's wrong. They accept that this is unjust, but they also accept that it's like almost a done deal as it's happening. And then there's nothing to do about that. And that's one of the things that really breaks my heart among all the other things that's shattering me. So,
I'd like to give you a little bit of hope at this point. I want to read something.
Please go ahead. Oh, you found it. Good. I'll show it.
I did. Yes. So this is.
I was getting sad.
This is like a laminated, but not just with plastic. It's like behind actually plexiglass. And this is something that's displayed in the apartment that I stayed in this summer in Al Khalil.
Sorry, do you have a? Are you looking at something that we could share?
I don't know how to send it to you. Oh, actually, I can email it back to you.
No, are you looking at a window per se?
Well, I
on
took
your computer.
Yeah, I took a photo of it, and I'm looking at the photo in my email because
if you want to email it to me and you want me to show it, I can. If you need a reference.
Okay, hang on. This is another thing that the activists tend to do is the people who were doing the documenting would typically take their videos and then upload them to something like Proton Cloud or P Cloud or something like that, and then delete them from the phone, because if you were to get stopped and your phone is taken away, you lose all that. So I got in the habit of everything I took a photo of that was not, like I took pictures of flowers and dogs and whatever, but things that could even remotely be dangerous if my phone were taken away, I would email to myself and then delete all the trails or whatever. And this is one of the things I did that. Let me find, hang on a second. I'm going to email this back to you. Copy, where is it? Copy email.
All right, I'll do a quick pause.
I'm going to just post it.
No. We'll do both. So yeah, I just got it. So let me present it so our viewers can see what you are reading. Thank you for sending this too. And here we go. All right. It is presented. You may read if you like.
One day a man was walking along the beach when he noticed a boy picking something up and gently throwing it into the ocean. Approaching the boy, he asked, "What are you doing?" The youth replied, "Throwing starfish back into the ocean. The surf is up and the tide is going out. If I don't throw them back, they'll die." "Son," the man said, "don't you realize there are miles and miles of beach and hundreds of starfish? You can't make a difference." After listening politely, the boy bent down, picked up another starfish, and threw it back into the surf. Then, smiling at the man, he said, "I made a difference for that one."
Oh, that's beautiful.
Oh, that's really sweet.
So
Lauren Isley.
That's how you have to look at this, is nobody's going to bring down the entire terrorist regime of Israel, in one fell swoop. But let me tell you, I occasionally send photos or small video clips or poems that I've written or whatever to some of my friends back in the West Bank, and they always say how grateful they are for what we're doing, for the energy that we're putting out as activists, and that even though I'm the only person in photos that they might know, they always say, "We love everyone in that picture." They're grateful for us, even if we're not, assassinating the bad guys.
Oh, wow. That starfish story is beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So it's horrible, but let me tell you, if these people can have hope, we need to have hope. They are stronger than we are. They're just incredible, but it's not easy. And if you don't mind, can I go back to the Ramadan thing and tell you another story of just how amazing these people are as humans?
Yeah, please. I'm just still being moved right now.
Kojay, but he will never mind. So let's just get that out of the way.
Okay, so
She is right.
I moved from the rural area to Al Khalil right in the middle of Ramadan. There were 13 days left in Ramadan when I arrived, and I knew no one. But I got out there and I was, going out to shops to buy food or get to know the city. And of those 13 days, I got 9 invitations to iftar. People who just met me come to my house for
Wow.
iftar tonight. And they mean it, So the
Mashallah.
last mashallah, yes, the last day of the last week of Ramadan, I was fasting on a Tuesday, but I had bought some food to eat at dusk. And I was sitting in this little park where there's like benches and some trees and stuff. It's right in the middle of a really busy street. But I was sitting there and I was on a WhatsApp call to one of my best friends back here in the States, and of course, speaking in English. And when I finished the call, well, there were these 3 young women sitting across from me, and they looked like they were about college age. So when I finished my call, one of them said something to me in English. She spoke good enough English that she, kind of understood what I was talking about. And they wound up, 2 of them were sisters and the third was a cousin, but they were all, like around 20 years old. And they invited me to come to their home for the last night of Ramadan, which was Saturday that week. Now, they don't live in the city. They live in a refugee camp just north of the city called El Arub. All right, so that afternoon, I had all these plates I was spinning at the same time. I was like trying to connect volunteers with information, and I had another friend who wanted the phone number of a guest house in Bethlehem that I was recommending, and my supervisor was there, and a woman who had been with ISM many years ago but was just visiting, and she's actually the one that connected me with the second agency that I went to go work with, and I was just juggling all this stuff at the same time. Now, remember, this is Saturday, right? Shabbat. These people shouldn't even be working according to their own laws. Be that as it may, but they've been messing around with the cell towers for 2 days, and the internet was in and out and communications were very spotty. The only 2 days I had problems with communication were the last 2 days of Ramadan. So it was intentional.
Mm-hmm.
So it got to, now sunset was at about 6:10 or 6:15 that day. And knowing that there was going to be a lot of traffic and transportation issues, my supervisor went to take me to get transportation at about 3:15 or 3:30 that day. And it was very difficult. I wound up basically being a kind of a hitchhiker in a private car instead of the transportation that's available. My supervisor flagged down a couple, like a middle-aged couple in a car, and said, "Hey, are you going past Al Aru? Will you take this person?" And they said yes. So they had fruit and bread, and they had apples and bread, and I had grapes and almonds to take to go to my dinner. So I left the apartment around 3:15 that day, and I was still 90 minutes late for iftar because they closed the checkpoints and just made people sit in their cars. Just to be spiteful. They knew it was, they knew it was the last day of Ramadan, so they inconvenienced everybody who was trying to get out of the city to get wherever they were going. Now, I was staying in touch with the young woman to let her know, because they'd been fasting all day too, and you know, it was the last night of Ramadan before Eid, and I said, go ahead and eat. You know, we have food in the car. I'll be okay. So we got to the gate of El Arub, and between the time that the couple who gave me a ride stopped at the gate and the father of the two sisters came down to get me, to take me to the house. So it was like 15, 20 minutes. During that time, the grandfather died. Now, what would an American, you know, he'd been in the hospital, it wasn't completely unexpected. But what would an American family do in a situation like that? They'd say, sorry, you've got to leave, we're dealing with family, blah, 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 right? No, they still welcomed me into their home, sat me down, fed me, and sat around the table and talked to me as if we were all sharing the meal together. And, you know, the women were kind of, you know, the older women, like the wife, it was her father that had died, and her sister, you know, was with her, and there might have been some cousins or something. But the father, the three girls, and some of the other younger children sat around with me. And then not only did they feed me and make me feel as welcome as though there had been no death in the family, they invited me to spend the night because they knew how hard it would be to get transportation back that late. That
Wow.
is Palestinian class. That is Palestinian graciousness and kindness and hospitality. So anybody who thinks they're, quote, terrorists, I'm sorry, they can go fuck themselves. And I needed to say that because they have no idea. They have no idea how beautiful the soul of these people is.
Again,
Wow.
it's opposite. Those who are claimed as barbaric terrorists and all this stuff, it's actually the ones who are occupying them.
Yeah.
And the ones who are the most moral, fill in the blank, whatever, are actually the most demons out there, you know? And it's plain as day. Everyone's seen it. It's just, and then you're feeling it with these interactions with these people, like the people. And it's just, wow. Like you know, I was saying, you know, when we were talking about, you know, like the death of hope and hopelessness, already thus far in this episode, just talking with you, hearing these stories, there's an abundance of hope.
Yeah.
It's just wow.
Yeah. I mean, my number one life philosophy, I formulated this about 10 years ago after I was falsely accused of saying something horribly racist, which could not have been further from the truth. But what I say now is, I don't care what country you're from. I don't care what religion you practice. I don't care what color your skin is. I don't care what language you speak. I don't care how old you are. I don't care what shoe size you wear. All I care about, are you nice or are you a dick? You know,
That's the truth.
I don't get it. You know, I don't get hating any group of people wholesale based on a stereotype or a cult indoctrination as Zionism does or whatever. I just don't understand hating a whole group of people because they belong to a group of people, unless they're homicidal maniacs, genocidal maniacs, you know.
Mm-hmm. Violent ideologies and actions are, you know, that's the problem.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
You know?
Oh, sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say, do whatever you want as you walk the face of this earth, as long as you don't hurt anybody, you know?
Yes.
I agree. I think a lot of people, looking at it from like an Islamic perspective, I think a lot of people live in the realm of nafs, which is ego. And I think when you when you rule your entire life by ego, you forget very simple things like just kind, just be ethical, just, you know, put others before yourself, don't harm anyone, don't try to profit off anyone or exploit anyone. So I think the problem is a lot of people live in the realm of nafs or ego. And I think, you know, this isn't the first genocide. Unfortunately, with the way that the world works, it's probably not the last genocide. But seeing everything that we have in real time, right? This is the first, I think, genocide that we've seen where all the evidence is on, Snapchat and Twitter and Instagram. And despite everything that Hasbara is doing and the government is doing and whatever the media is saying, we're seeing the pictures every single day. And it's really humanized, right? And we've seen exactly what goes on. Because we would always hear about and read about, like, okay, this is what happened with slavery and colonization and the famines and what happened to the Native Americans and, Manifest Destiny. We knew about Kashmir and the Rohingyas. We've known about what happened in Iraq and in Afghanistan. But I think this is the first time where we're seeing, wait, when we hear the terms colonialism and imperialism and genocide, this is what actually goes on each and every single day. This is the magnitude that people suffer. And I think seeing it has really made people understand, like, this is what capitalism does. This is what consumerism does. This is what, imperialism does. This is what ego does.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people are starting to kind of wake up and realize we can't live in the realm of ego anymore. And I think that's why a lot of, when I go to the masjid, I'm Muslim, a lot of Muslims will say, don't pray for the Palestinians, pray for the Israelis, because the Palestinians are going to go straight to Jannah. It's the Israelis that we worry about, because they're the ones who don't understand the ramifications of what they're doing.
Yeah.
And I never truly understood that until I saw everything that was going on. And I was like, dunya, which means the world belongs to the imperialists and the oppressors, but the afterlife belongs to the oppressed.
That's exactly why, if I may jump in at this point,
you're the star.
I've met dozens, if not a few hundred Palestinians while I was there, and not one single one of them, not one, had any kind of rage or hate that I could detect. And they literally do not say, we hate Jews. What they say is, we don't hate Jews. We just want to live under the same laws they do. We want our homes back. We want our livelihoods back. We want our land back. That's all we want. And it wasn't until pretty late in my second trip that was addended with an explanation of part of why they're so stoic about it. I mean, they're tortured and they're miserable, but they also have a kind of hope and joy because it's built into the faith of Islam. And this is something that, the Israelis now don't have, and the Crusaders didn't have, Christianity doesn't have. You read about their histories, and yeah, there were wars in the early days of Islam, but the faith has evolved. Are you guys both Muslim, by the way?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
We are.
So please correct me if I'm wrong, but Islam is like, I remember doing a lot of reading. I read the Quran in English last year, and I get it. I grew up Christian, but I have not observed or followed or really even believed in Christianity for about 20 years. It just stopped making sense to me for various reasons that aren't related to any of the other stuff we're talking about here. But I remember reading somewhere that part of why the Quran hasn't changed and that the best way to read it is in Arabic is because it doesn't need to change. It's like a religion for all time. And I wish I could remember who said that. It was some scholar whose name I knew, but I don't remember now who it was. But it doesn't need to evolve. It doesn't need to change. It doesn't need to adapt. It doesn't need to be retranslated to fit the times. And these things are built into the religion, the peace, the acceptance, and that there's actually prophecies related to what is happening to Palestinians now. Not all Arabs, not all Muslims, but they believe that this is Allah's will and that they will get past it either by dying and going to Jannah or that or whatever. And I'm sorry, I don't remember what the rest of the prophecy is, but that this is something they're destined for, what they're going through. And it gives me a hope in all parts of my heart that when this is over and Palestine is free, they are not going to turn around with the, what is it called? Like the cultural trauma, the psychological, I don't remember what it's called. There's a term for it, but the fact that the Jewish people were the victims and then they're turning it around and doing the exact same thing to another innocent people. But that I truly believe that the Palestinians will not turn around and do it to somebody else later because of their faith.
No, I agree with you. And actually, when you study like the Quran and you study like, I guess you can say like Sharia law, which is just like Islamic jurisprudence or Islamic law, the Prophet actually went, peace be upon him, he went into depth about the rules of war. You can never be on the offensive, only the defensive. And even then, there's all these rules and regulations that come with it. So, for example, don't harm the women, don't harm the children, don't harm the animals, don't harm the land. If,
Don't harm
someone,
the crops.
right, correct.
Bunch of stuff.
If someone says, I surrender, I want peace, you give them peace. You can't just excessively bombard them and things of that nature. Now,
you can't reject it.
Yeah. And have you seen, I guess we can say I don't even want to say the Muslim world, but in the Swana region, have you seen countries or governments or militaries not abide by those rules? Yeah, absolutely. But they were following the rules of dunya, which is the world. They weren't following the rules of Islam. And that's one thing, people have to understand. When you see barbaric and terrible things going on in the Islamic world, it's not actually the Islamic world. It's the cultures, right? And that's
correct. There's a big difference with faith and culture.
Oh, yeah.
So if someone says, because I'm of Pakistani descent, if someone says, I think, Pakistani culture is really misogynistic, I'd say, yeah, absolutely. Right. And the reason Islam was so important to be introduced to those regions and beyond was to truly like civilize people and, get rid of oppression and bring in fairness and justice. And you're absolutely correct. Muslims actually believe that the Torah and the Bible are also books of God, right?
Yes.
So the 3 books of God are the Torah, the Bible, and the Quran. Now,
that's why the Quran is the final testament.
Yeah.
Correct. It's considered, it's almost like a trilogy, and it's like
I was about to go there.
But... Yeah, like chapter. That's kind of how they view it. But I think the most important thing that a lot of people don't understand is Muslims don't believe that Christianity and Judaism is evil and terrible or whatever you hear in the media. The only thing that they believe is due to political infrastructure and what happened throughout history, both those books were corrupted. They were corrupted by governments. They were corrupted by kings. And so the Quran came, as the final book to say, okay, this is the final revelation of God. And it's the only book that hasn't been altered, which is why Muslims say, hey, like we respect, the people of the book. We believe that they came from God, but this is the only one that hasn't been altered. And so
essentially like the director's cut from God.
Yeah, and it doesn't even come from like a place of superiority, because when I think people truly understand Islam for what it is, like Muslims who are very well read and they practice it, you'll never hear them say, oh, Jews are beneath us and Christians are beneath us. If anything, they say, as a Muslim, you will be judged much harder than a Jew or a Christian or let's say an atheist or Hindu or whatever, because as Muslims, we have all the knowledge, right? And if we have all this knowledge given to us and we're not abiding by it and practicing it, God will judge us accordingly. But if, let's say, someone from a different faith is not abiding by all these rules and regulations, well, they didn't have the knowledge of it. So how can they be on the same playing field? So if anything, Muslims believe that once you've read the Quran, once you've taken the Shahada, once you are, born into Islam or a revert, you're actually judged much, much harder and scrutinized than anyone outside of the faith. And I think a lot of people don't understand that. And so, from my understanding, and please, correct me if I'm wrong, Kojay, but from my understanding, it's not that, Muslims are better or anything. It's more like we have an obligation to practice all these rules, because unfortunately, a lot of, other individuals don't have this knowledge. And to be ambassadors of our faith is the way that we should be spreading knowledge, especially women. They say women spread, Islam through adab, which is etiquette, right? Like our politeness, our kindness, being maternal. And so what you were doing, going back to when you're like, I was just cooking and cleaning, that's part of adab, that's etiquette, right? Like you didn't even know it, but you were practicing a form of adab being within that household, right? That's an Islamic principle. So that's the thing. You know, I don't force people to like revert or, you know, become Muslim or read the Quran or anything of that nature. But if you want to judge a religion, any ideology, don't look at what other people say. Study it for yourself and then come to your conclusions. Because whenever I hear about all these like crazy opinions about Islam, I'm like, you know, I'm not a scholar. There's a lot I need to learn, but I, you know, take classes. I go to the masjid. Like, you know, I look at it on a scholarly level. I've studied Sharia law. And every time I study it, I'm like, wow, I didn't understand the depth of how forgiving this religion is, or how much compassion there is, or how much, you know, we need to overcome nafs and ego and things of that nature. And so I think a lot of what people have conceptualized about Islam is honestly just propaganda. It's Hasbara. It's, you know, whatever serving U.S. foreign policy. Because at the end of the day, I think when people hate Islam and view it as like, oh, it's barbaric and it's terrible and it's uncivilized and things of that nature, when we see all these bombs, you know, going off all over the Middle East, people think, well, they deserve it. They're uncivilized, right? And that doesn't make sense. If there's groups of people who are quote unquote uncivilized, bombing them is only going to make them angrier. Shouldn't we quote unquote like teach them etiquette or, you know, whatever the case may be? So to me, it never made sense. Like if there's a group of people who are barbaric, bombing them isn't going to make them be more peaceful. So that itself isn't logical, but I think they just don't think for themselves. They just hear, you know, Fox and CNN popping off on whatever they have to say. And people are like, oh, those crazy Muslims, you know, and I'm very fortunate to be part of this faith because it's taught me a lot of patience and gratitude and really big and heavy on the patience. I think that's the number one thing it's taught me.
I went to like a 1-day class. It was only like 2 hours long, a lecture, I guess you would call it, at USC just about a year ago. It was in October last year. And the professor teaches this class like once every 2 or 3 years. I don't know, it may be different now because of the escalation of things, but it's a seminar. It was a 1 evening class, but she teaches like a full semester class or quarters. I don't remember what, and I think they do semesters at USC. And even within that 2 hours, sorry, I'm kind of talking around in circles because I wasn't expecting to bring this up in the conversation today, but she does this comparison of like all the different kinds of media over, you know, the last 100 years or whatever, and all the different ways that movies, cartoons, books, popular culture things of various kinds, how Arabs/Muslims/Palestinians are shown in these media. You know, like they're shown to be the backwards culture or the terrorists or whatever. And she did like a comparative thing, and you know, there was a slideshow. I might even still have the notes of this from that day somewhere, but there was like 250 instances of portrayals of Arabs/Muslims/Palestinians as the bad guys, and like 7 where they weren't. Something like that. I mean, I have my numbers wrong, I'm sure. But this is something that's culturally ingrained in us growing up in the West/the United States specifically, is just all the portrayals over and over and over and over of this particular type of quote brown person unquote being, you know, demonic. And it just made me sick. You know, when I studied Arabic, I also kind of did, you know, I did Introduction to Islam and Arabic literature and African history that included, you know, some of the stuff from that time. And I remember I was still practicing Christianity at the time. I was not tempted away from that at all. But just having my eyes opened a little bit, but in these last couple of years, it's been like, yeah, this is really pervasive in our culture, the demonizing. And I don't know why I glossed over it for so long. I personally didn't have any, you know, obviously I have Arab friends and Chinese friends and Korean friends and, you know, all over because of the philosophy I told you about before. But once I went to that seminar, I'm like, holy crap, we really do demonize these people.
Mm-hmm.
And it blows my mind. And then having read the Quran and realizing how similar it is to the other holy books, and something that if you're non-Muslim viewers who don't know a whole lot about Islam, something I learned that I thought was very curious at the time, and I see, I recognize quickly that it's a cultural thing, and I don't think it ever would have worked for me personally, because my family background is kind of messed up, and I've been emotionally independent since I was 8 years old because my parents sucked, but that's neither here nor there. But what I learned was that Muslim women actually pity Western women because often we have a period in our lives where we have to fend for ourselves, whereas the culture provides for girls to stay with their parents until they get married and then they have a husband. So they're basically always looked after. And that was a really big, that like my head rocked back, metaphorically, but I'm like, wow, I never saw it in those terms, that they realize that we live our lives a very different way culturally in that respect. And they look at it from a completely different angle because, as I'm sure you guys are aware, Westerners look at it as oppressing women, but they look at it as though we're vulnerable by not having a man to look after us. And I thought that was interesting.
I agree with that. I do not agree with Western feminism for a multitude of reasons, but the biggest reason would be Western feminism teaches us that, women need to fight for their rights because women are equivalent to men. That actually doesn't align with the principles of Islam, because in Islam, if it's practiced the way that it should be, right? We can't take culture into it because there's a lot of barbaric cultures.
Yes.
But in Islam, women are actually a higher status than men. So then if I was to say I'm a Muslim, I come from a religion where women are highly regarded in a higher status than men. To become a Western feminist, now I'm downgrading myself to say now I'm equivalent to a man. So it's actually a downgrade.
Yeah, I like that.
And that's the thing. And see, to me, if women prescribe themselves to Western feminism or values that are completely different from the Muslim world, they have every right to, right? Religious freedom and female autonomy is a thing. But I also think that if women were given maybe the resources and tools that are given in other countries, right? Like access to education, healthcare, if they were, if men were taught that, men are protectors and providers of women should not be sexual objects, women should not, be sold off, and, things of that nature. I think women would potentially be making very different choices in the West. So I think choice is important, right? Like women should be given the choice to do, go on whichever side of the spectrum. But if there's tools and resources that were given in the West that they're not normally given, I don't think we would have women in the positions that we do. I think a lot of women that end up in the positions that they do, they're not, following female autonomy and freedom. They're prescribing to it because they're like, I have no other option. And I think that is a form of oppression, and I have to be very careful in the way that I word it, but I don't word it this way because I look down on Western women. It's kind of like what you said. I think if Western women understood that there's an entire world that would protect for them, provide for them, give them provision, give them certain rights, put them on a pedestal, view them as a life source, respect them beyond the objectification and the consumerism that we see, we would be living very, very beautiful lives, and I want that for all women. I think women suffer enough, like giving childbirth, going through, your menstruation and dealing with all like the domestic violence and sexual violence. It affects women way more than it affects men. We know that. We know that. And I think Islam kind of takes that world into account and says, because of all the things women have to go through and because they bear life, they are given certain rights that men don't have, and men need to respect it. And if they do not, they are not practicing Islam, right? We see a lot of barbarism in the Muslim world, and that's because Muslim men are not following their religion. I really feel that way, but yeah, I can't prescribe to Western feminism. I'm not equal to a man. I apologize. I am above a man, and I'm very gracious to be in a religion that taught me that.
No, that's really good. And, as a Muslim man and a revert, I totally understand and embrace that. As my mother was a single parent for a long time, I saw her struggles and what she did for us. And I have two sisters who I like to give credit for raising me pretty well. And I'm the older one. But people don't understand that in Islam we have this etiquette and rules to take care of the woman. In fact, I even feel like Muslim women don't really need a man sometimes because they have Allah. But so now I know that a Muslim woman who would be with me or whatever chooses to be with me, and we also have this form of dowry where it's not like we give money to the family to have the wife. It's a constant, like, I guess, like I had an agent once upon a time, and I gave her like 15%, or whatever. It's like the money goes to her for her. You don't touch it. It's so she could be taken care of. So this taking care of the woman you love is something I've always believed in. So seeing that what's the word, promoted in Islam just made Islam feel way more like home for me, because I believe that. I think that's good. And to go back to what we're talking in Palestine with your experience with that family, and should no, sorry, I'll correct myself. When Palestine is free, I do not see them being the oppressors. It's not that. It's not in them. It's not that. Not just their faith, but their culture, because Palestinians are majority Muslim, but there are Christians there too, and some are Jewish. So they know how to live among others, and they just want equal rights. And I'm as old as you are, Gigi, in activism for Palestine, because it's around October in 2023 when I educated myself, and in the course of covering it on my channel, I've learned more and more and more about what's going on. In the course of doing my channel, I even in the beginning saw Hamas as a terrorist group, but as I read, research, saw more and more, I was like, oh, they're resistance.
Yeah.
Big difference. So a lot of things I'm absorbing in, as well as I'm getting closer with God with my faith now. And it's just being closer to truth. And, there's less shadows I see, so the Palestinians are, I feel like Palestine is like the heart of humanity right now, which you got to go and do wonderful work in helping people. And I can't commend you enough. So
no. Don't put that on me.
No, I'm not trying to pedestal you here, but just want to give you credit because I'm in thanks for your efforts and people who do what you do, like people on the flotillas, and even everyone doing a little bit, even just a tweet or sharing the word. I mean, it's really great, like what you do, what we do, what we all do. And, I just hope there's more we can do. So back to your your time there. So it's Ramadan. You're over there with the family. What other things have you been through when you were over there that you witnessed and experienced? This last time, because you were there twice, right?
Yes. And my time with ISM, once I shifted from the rural Jordan Valley to Al Khalil, for various reasons that were not the fault of the agency itself, I was kind of stuck for a while, and I fell back into I don't understand what, I don't feel like I'm doing anything useful here. Again, not the agency's issue. There were other reasons, that things like the timing of volunteers coming in and leaving, the partnerships with other agencies in Al Khalil that previous groups of volunteers had flaked out on, and they were, leery of getting involved. But 3 weeks before I left the first time, there was a team of 4. I had been there the longest, and then someone came 2 weeks after me. Oh, I don't remember what the timing was, but there was me, one person who came from a subsequent volunteer group, and then 2 people who came from a subsequent group immediately after the second person. And one of them only intended to spend a week and then go and do the rest of their service in Massafaryata. But for that 1 week, we were a team of 4. And one of the places that I had not known about until pretty late in my time there was, I had mentioned the refugee camp called El Arub, which is to the north of Al Khalil. There's another refugee camp called Al Fawar. And Al Fawar is also very vulnerable. They get attacked all the time, vandalism, raids, beatings in the middle of the night, you name it. But that was one of the places that we were supposed to have been working. But again, previous volunteers had let the connection fall by the wayside. So once this week that we were a team of 4, our supervisor, our Palestinian supervisor in the city, took us down there, and the 3 areas that the ISM team was supposed to be working with at Al Fawar were the Children's Center, the Women's Center, and teaching ESL classes. But there's this weird thing is, for some reason, when they want volunteers to teach ESL, they want to do it when school's not in session, which doesn't make sense to me. But since I was a linguistics major and I have all this background in language and I studied Arabic, I would have been a great person to do that. But they're like, oh no, the classes aren't going on right now. Okay. So the day that we went, the Children's Center was doing an activity, and the guy who works with the kids has a background in theater. And I have a background in technical theater. I took classes like playwriting, storytelling, Greek tragedy, TV directing, screenwriting. I took classes like that in college, and I've written a couple of screenplays in the past 10 years. So we were sitting around, we did an activity with the kids. We did a storyboarding activity. And then most of the kids left, and then the 4 of us volunteers, our supervisor, and the 3 people from Al Fawar were sitting around a table. And the man working with the kids, his name is Khalil, interestingly enough, Khalil in Al Khalil. He started describing this project that he had, and our supervisor was translating because his English was not great. And as I was listening to what this project was, first of all, the other 3 volunteers were kind of like metaphorically whistling and looking at the ceiling because they didn't want to be noticed because they weren't interested or qualified. And I realized that this was my purpose, that even though I had already spent 9 weeks kind of floundering and feeling like I wasn't doing much, as soon as this thing came to light, I'm like, this is my gig. And I have not yet started working on it because a Palestinian friend of mine here, who lives very close to me, where I am, I don't live in the city proper, I live outside the city, but he's translating the Arabic because my Arabic is nowhere near good enough, but he's translating it. And what it is a stage play that I'm going to write the English version of and try to get staged here in LA and anywhere else I can. And I'm just going to warn you, I always get emotional when I talk about this, so I might get a little choked up. The first part of the project is a collection of vignettes, and each of the characters, it's connected thematically by each of the characters having something in their life that's traumatic to them that's tied to a number. For example, one of the characters is an unmarried young woman whose mother keeps nagging her to lose 18 kilos. So her trauma number is 18, if that makes sense. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's the first part. It's a collection of vignettes where the characters may or may not be related to each other, but thematically they all have a trauma number. The second part of the project is a one-act play called Under the Rubble. And I had 3 meetings with Khalil, and I took some notes in English, but I want to read, the fully fleshed out description that he has in Arabic when it's translated, so I can really do the thing justice. So when the audience enters, there's going to be projections of real news clips of buildings being bombed, buildings collapsing, rescue workers digging people out, ambulances, people being carried on stretchers, people holding their dead loved ones, crying, things like that. And you see them all kind of as a collage. Then when the show starts, depending on the theater, either the curtain comes up or the lights come up on the main stage, and it's a pile of rubble, cinder blocks, burned clothes, broken toys. And upstage, Khalil envisions mannequins. There's possible other ways to do this, and it's going to take a little bit of work for American audiences to realize what these things are, because they're effigies of the neighboring Arab nations that are selling out the Palestinians and ignoring them. So one of them is supposed to represent Sisi, one is supposed to represent the King of Jordan, one is supposed to represent, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia. But Americans won't recognize them with just a face. So, I've got to figure out how to do that. So the characters come out one by one, either from behind pieces in the set of the rubble or underneath, like lifting something and moving it and coming out. And they tell their stories one by one about what they were doing the day the building collapsed. And then they go back to their place under the rubble to signify that they're dead.
Wow.
And the last one, and this is where it's going to get emotional, the last one is a little girl in a blood-stained party dress carrying a cake. It was her birthday, the day the building collapsed, and her mother died giving birth to her baby brother. Now, instead of going back under the rubble when she's done, she finds a violin in the rubble and starts playing. And then the other actors who played the characters in the other scenes come out and tear down the effigies. And then they have baby dolls. Sorry, this is where I lose it. They have baby dolls and they sit along the edge of the stage, and the sound effects come up of the sound of newborns crying to show that life continues amongst the death and destruction. And I get the privilege of writing this thing. And once I heard about this project, I knew that was my purpose. And during my time with ISM, that is, far and away the most profound thing that came to me. So I brought that back as a project. And then I know, Kojay, you wanted to wrap up the interview with things that I'm doing next. And
whenever that wrap-up time is here, this is your space. Use this platform as yours. I want you feel free and safe to tell us as much as you want. There's no real limit.
Thank you.
Yeah. Just breathe, and thank you for this.
Yeah. So I left at the end of my 3-month tourist visa, and I went back to Egypt for a few days. I crossed by land. Actually, most of the volunteers that go in do come in by land. They fly into Amman, Jordan, and cross by land. But there's a lot of logistics and extra expenses in that. So I have not chosen to do that. I have taken other border crossings and other means of coming and going. So I went to Egypt for a few days, and then I flew to Toronto and kind of detoxed and unjet lagged for a couple of days, and visited my friend who set me on the path to activism, the Libyan guy. And then I wound up going to Chicago for 8 days to take care of the cat of some of my friends who were on vacation. And it was during the time I was in Chicago that I got the call from the second agency that I went with, Hebron International Resource Network, and was asked to come back for August. And the work is very, very different. HERN, which I think it's been renamed. I think now it's called Palestine Internship Immersion Program. The website is PIIPV.org, I think. But I was asked to come back, and the guy who runs the agency out of the Al Khalil space, his day job, he works for the United Nations. So we were going to assignments of all different kinds and riding around in a truck with the UN painted on the side. So we didn't have to show our passports at as many checkpoints as just a regular, a regular car would. And we were given a little bit of extra leeway sometimes, not always. But the scope of the work was just so much broader than what ISM is doing. And don't get me wrong, ISM is doing great work. It's very necessary. It's needed. And there's people there. I'm sure there are people who love doing it right now. I have some friends who I met back in spring who are going back to help with the olive harvest, which ISM also helps with. Just a very different scope of the work, because with HERN, one of my first assignments was stuffing backpacks with school supplies for kids. We went to a furniture store to buy a bedroom set for a man who was getting married and couldn't afford the bedroom set. We put together food packages for families in an area that was, choked by the settler activity and not able to produce their products and get them out and sell, to have the money to support themselves. We witnessed houses being built after they'd been demolished. We went and documented demolished houses, demolished neighborhoods. What else did we do? This is the one that will stick with me forever, is we went to go visit some people in the hospital the day after they'd been beaten up in the middle of the night while they were asleep in their cave, because the house had already been destroyed. And there were 3 people sharing the hotel room. One was a man in his 30s who was very worried about his 8-year-old boy, who had to be transferred to another facility because he had bleeding in his brain, and they couldn't really adequately help him at the facility where the father was. By the way, all 3 people we did meet had all been beaten in the head. They all had bloodied heads. So the other 2 were an 85-year-old man who, in addition to being beaten on the head, had a broken arm, and his 79-year-old wife. That's the kind of monsters these settlers are. They go beat people up while they're asleep in their cave in the middle of the night. 85-year-old man, 79-year-old woman. And this is the stuff that's not being reported. Yes, the world has woken up because of the flotillas and the famine and the starvation and the bullshit food distribution centers and, this ceaseless onslaught of military, this, that, and the other thing. But I think that if the media would start also reporting on the settler violence and destruction and terrorism in the West Bank, I do think that almost everybody would rise up and say, okay, enough of this. Unfortunately, the eyes are still, all eyes on Gaza. And when I do make comments on social media, I say, no, one eye on Gaza, one on the West Bank. You can't.
You're correct. I didn't mean to interrupt you, because there was a time where I think it was like a month or 2 ago, there was settlers were just burning everything. There was I think an entire city or something that was burned in the West. And they were posting pictures of it on Twitter, right? And then because there wasn't a caption, people would retweet and be like, look what's going on in Gaza. And people actually had to correct and be like, no, this is the West Bank. And I remember actually thinking about it, along the lines that you are. I was like, we're so fixated on Gaza, as we should be. I mean, what they're going through in Gaza insane doesn't even begin to cover, like, you know, the amount of damages that we've seen. But as a byproduct of that, the moment that we see a picture of, you know, people suffering or something on fire or destruction, we automatically think, oh, it's Gaza, but it's the West Bank as well, you know? And that's what we need to understand. We hear about Gaza so much that people don't conceptualize that, no, it's Palestinians as a whole. Both regions are suffering, you know?
Yeah.
And I think Israelis are really taking advantage of the fact that all eyes are fixated on Gaza, which is really, you know, putting people in the West Bank in a very, you know, disturbing situation.
Mm-hmm. There was another man who worked on the film No Other Land, the Oscar winner. His name was Adwa Hathlin. He was murdered about a week before I arrived back for my second trip in a village called Al Khair. And I visited Al Khair 3 or 4 times during the month that I was there. And, you know, you can still see the blood on the ground where he was killed. And the settler who murdered him is, if you follow the right accounts on social media where activists are documenting this and getting the footage posted, he's just everywhere. Like, he's known. And guess what? He murdered somebody in cold blood and was never arrested. He's still out there terrorizing. They've torn down the chain link fence that was surrounding Al Khair. He goes by on his motorcycle in the middle of the night and revs the motor to scare them. He'll go onto the private property with like a big strobe light and shine it into the windows while people are trying to sleep. And he's a cocky son of a bitch. You know, when you see him in these videos, he's like proud of what a dick he is. And the most recent thing that I've seen from Al Khair is that they've, you know, first they cut down the fence surrounding the hamlet, and they've gone in very, very recently and uprooted like 2,000 olive trees or something, which, you know, that's their livelihood, their olive oil and their olives. And that's what they do. There was another instance during the time I was there. I don't remember where this happened. I want to say it was near Ramallah, but they came in and they plowed, like they had bulldozers or whatever, 8,000 olive trees in one go they killed.
Wow.
What do you say to things like that? You know, who's the bad guy? Who's the terrorist?
Mm-hmm.
It sure isn't the people who want to harvest those olives.
It's so shocking. So shocking. It's shocking how it's not shocking enough to everyone else who's like, you know, sipping on the Western media or whatever that is.
Yeah.
It's so hidden in plain sight with our media.
To those who are watching and listening and on Instagram, you can find plenty of accounts where this stuff is, but the two I would tell people to, as soon as you're done watching this podcast, go to your Instagram account and look for these two accounts, because pretty much all they cover is West Bank violence, terrorism, and destruction. Occasionally there will be Gaza things as well, but if you really want to keep an eye on what's going on every day in the West Bank, the first one is ISM's account. It's called ISMPalestine.
ISMPalestine.
Yeah, and there's no dots or dashes or underscores or anything. It's just ISMPalestine. And their logo is a big red square surrounded by a white rectangle, surrounded by a green rectangle, surrounded by a black rectangle. Of course, the watermelon colors, the flag colors. So that's how they'll know it is ISMPalestine, and then it's a big rectangle of the 4 colors, but the main rectangle is red. So follow that one, and then this guy is, like, in my opinion, and others who follow him and know who he is, he's a real rock star. He is a young Russian Jewish guy in his probably late 20s at this point.
He has glasses, right?
His name is Andrey X. It's spelled.
Yeah, I follow him.
Yeah. So I believe his account is called the _ Andrey _X. And his story is kind of interesting. He's a Russian Jew who left Russia when he saw what was going on with the Ukrainian war a few years ago. And he's like, screw this. I don't want to be part of this. And he had an aunt, I believe. I don't remember, and I apologize to anybody who knows better than me, but I want to say he had an aunt that lived in Tel Aviv, and he went to go stay with her, and he, did the birthright thing and got his citizenship in Israel. And then once he realized what was going on, he became an activist, and now he is basically just all over the West Bank and getting in, I call him the ITF, and the T stands for terrorist. He gets in the ITF spaces, or he'll stand his ground and just go, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? And one that really impressed me fairly recently was he got stopped, and he was going somewhere, and he got stopped, and he didn't play the Israeli citizen card right off the bat. He played his press pass card first. And they still kept hassling him, and they were saying, well, you're Russian and blah, 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 blah. And he goes, I'm also an Israeli citizen. And then they backed off.
Oh, wow.
But they still gave him a little bit of hassle, but they knew they couldn't really touch him the same way as if he had just been like a Russian Jewish tourist. But the fact that he played the press pass first really is like, this guy is a
very
rock star. Yeah, he's a rock star. So
yeah, I follow this guy. He was recently I was watching some of his he was documenting in his journalistic work of settlers attacking and digging for water pipes in West Bank. They were trying to destroy the water source for the Palestinians.
I saw that too.
One of his colleagues was getting choked out by a cop.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, wow. So I'm going to have these links available in our description. So you watching this, check it out, and any other links down below.
Did you also see that they, in solidarity with the Samud flotilla, they walked right up to the gate of Gaza?
Yeah, the gate. Yeah. They gave him trouble too, and didn't they break his wrist or arm?
I don't think they broke it. I think they
hurt it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Sprain.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I remember seeing him do that. I was like, man, this guy he's 100%.
Yep. Yeah, he's a good dude. I hope to have the honor of meeting him someday, because but I'm sure he'd feel the same way as like, it's not about him. He would, say it's not about me. Don't call me a rock star. I'm no hero, whatever. But I still like him a whole lot.
No, it's good. I mean, like, it's good to champion these people. Like,
we're choosing the wrong people in society. It's better to uplift voices like yours and his than all the garbage I see on my timeline these days. So no, if there's anyone that should be celebrated, it's people who are making sacrifices and putting aside their privilege to help the oppressed. I think if you are part of the oppressed and you're helping the oppressed, people will think to themselves, well, of course they're oppressed. But I think to have privilege and put that privilege aside and still help the oppressed, I think that's actually a much bigger deal.
Yeah.
That is a very, very big deal. And I think the voices that need to be amplified, the news that needs to be amplified, the individuals that need to be amplified are not. So I think, I'm humbled that Kojay invited me to co-host this and we were able to amplify your voice. And I'm sure there's a multitude of people on, his social networks as well as mine that would love to reach out to you. Maybe they have questions, maybe they want to give gratitude, maybe they want to volunteer. Is there any way that they could reach out to you, either like social media, email, website, anything that you'd like to share?
I'm really low key when it comes to a presence online. I like to do a lot of my stuff kind of under the radar. Like, I thought of a couple of campaigns, and again, I wasn't planning on mentioning this, but something that I did when I came back the first time, and I was in California during the summer, I wrote one letter. Now, I know that some people in California have put off paying their taxes because we were given an extension due to the wildfires that were not long before tax season back in January, February, March. But I paid my taxes just to get it out of the way before I left. And based on success that I had when I was paying the penalty for Obamacare, when I didn't have health insurance 15, 16, however many years ago, based on the success I got, I was refunded 100% of the penalty both times that I requested it. So I did something similar this year, and I sent one letter to the state of California and one to the IRS saying, I don't want to pay for foreign wars. I don't want to pay to subsidize life and healthcare and education and transportation in other countries when Americans have so little and our taxes aren't paying for these things here. And as a conscientious objector, and knowing that, you know, gas prices are going up, food prices are going up, billionaires aren't paying their share, corporations aren't paying anything. I want a refund of whatever I paid for taxes that go to foreign wars and foreign aid. Between California and the IRS, I got almost $3,000 back, and I was only marginally employed for 6 months last year.
Wow.
So I've done a thing where I've shared the information with people, but I don't post it on social media. I'll just, you know, send out emails to people who've requested it or whatever. I also tried to get another thing going where people would send emails, and just, there wasn't as much time to work on this. Plus, everyone was so into the whole flotilla thing around this time, and then the ceasefire talks a couple days ago. But I also wanted people to flood the Human Rights Division of the United Nations with emails in the inbox to say, we support South Africa's legal case against Israel for apartheid and genocide, and we support Malaysia for trying to get Israel kicked out of the UN, because they did. It didn't pass, but Malaysia introduced not a bill. What is it called? A resolution. They introduced a resolution some months ago to get Israel kicked out of the UN, because South Africa was kicked out for apartheid only, and look at all the crap that Israel's pulling. So I wanted that to be a thing, and I don't think that worked very well. But I tend to do things, I tend to let the people who have the social media presence, like I'll give them the information and let them spread the information, because I don't post, I follow, I don't have a following, whatever. But in the instance of people wanting to reach out to me, I would recommend probably, I have like 4 email accounts. I have Instagram.
Whatever you feel comfortable with, because we do live in very pressing times. So if you don't feel comfortable with it, that's okay.
Yeah,
too.
it's only if it's like something you have that you're willing to put out there. If not, you know,
I'm hesitant. Put it that way.
That's fine.
Yeah. So,
and if anyone reaches out to us, we can always, you know, figure out a way to connect you as well. No, when I asked, it was just if you wanted to promote yourself shamelessly, and I
more
don't
that amplification,
right? But I think if you're working on projects, if you need help with anything, if you want to answer questions, if you have a website or anything, I love it when people are able to connect through podcasts, right?
Yeah.
They have an avenue, but we also live in very uncertain times, and it is kind of uncomfortable sometimes putting personal information out there because we don't know if it will land in the right hands. And so
exactly.
And I understand. But what I would recommend, because I also have my personal, account, and then I have my social media presence, I would honestly just create a burner account or like an online alias or something of that nature, because you never know when it could be needed, right? To connect with certain people. I always tell people that, keep an alias, don't put your personal information out there, because with the way things are going, it doesn't look so good right now. And I don't think it's going to get any better. It's probably going to get progressively worse. I think a lot of our freedoms and a lot of our amendments are theoretical at best. And so I always want to make sure that, your privacy is honored, and you're not having any rights violated, your information isn't landing in the wrong hands. But creating a burner account is never a bad thing, as long as it's not traced back to you, because it can help you as well. I use an alias Kojay, I'm sure you have your alter egos or aliases as well to keep you protected, maybe.
Kind of. I just don't share as much as I used to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm already here. It's over.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm trying to think if using you guys as a connection would be suitable. Like if your viewers.
Oh, I got you, sister. Don't worry.
Yeah. So if your viewers reach out to you, and then you can pass messages on to me, because
I'll screen them first.
Yeah, because I still have a lot of plates in the air. I'm doing a bike ride this weekend for Palestine. I have that play that I'm going to write when I get the English.
We're gonna go to it.
What the bike ride?
No, the play when it happens. I'm
Oh.
definitely going to be there.
All right. I just started reading literally yesterday. I just started reading The 100 Years' War on Palestine.
Really, that's a phenomenal book to read.
Yeah, I should have read it a year ago. What else have I got going on? This one's good. So some of you, very few Americans, but activists who kind of have their finger on several pulses may know this. There was a general labor strike on April 7th in solidarity with Gaza because of the violation of the ceasefire. So this was all across the West Bank, and some of my activist friends here in the States had heard about it, not a whole lot, but some had. And one of my superpowers is writing. I love to write. I'm good with language. I've always just, it's my gift, and I'm grateful. So the day of the strike, my volunteer partner, now she is a photographer, she went out and, there was a demonstration in the city and she took videos and pictures. And then I went down and interviewed several of my shopkeeper friends a few days later and wrote an article about the strike. And then I turned it into a very personal story about the friend that I mentioned a couple hours ago at this point that I talked to this morning on the phone. So once I really realized how badly the economy has been broken by the occupation, and particularly things that have happened in light of, because of, and after October 7th, I wanted to do something kind of unique. So just to kind of give a little bit of background, is this friend that, like, I buy all my souvenirs from him when I'm there, and I bring back extra kufiyas and tote bags.
Oh, you do? It's
yeah.
great.
And keychains and stuff. And I sell them for a little bit above cost to help pay for the postage in sending them back. But then I recycle the money and put it right back the next time I'll go. I'll put all that money back into his shop again. But the day that I interviewed him, I bought 2 little braided bracelets. They were twine that was the 4 colors of the Palestinian flag. And we had our, we sat down in his shop and talked for a couple hours. And at one point, a family came by. They were Russian Jews, a husband, a wife, and 2 young children. And my friend got up because he wanted to greet them. And the 2 men actually talked for a while. And then they hugged each other. And I just about started to cry. I'm like, why can't they all be like this? But the family didn't buy anything, and my friend came back. We finished the interview, and then it was getting time to close up because Maghrib was coming, and he wanted to go pray. So while he was closing up the shop, he told me that I was his only customer that day, and I had spent a total of only 10 shekels, which translates to about $3.50.
Wow.
And I just about lost it when I realized, that, plus the fact that when you walk through Old City, all these shops have been, you look at, some are open, but probably 75 to 80% of them are just shuttered, and they don't exist anymore because the military came through and said, you're done, you're done, you're done, you're done, your business is gone, goodbye, you can't come back, no more. And it just broke my heart. So this isn't quite up and running yet, but I have the bare bones of a petition on change.org where I want to make Al Khalil and Anaheim sister cities so that Anaheim, which has hundreds of thousands of international tourists every year, has, the name Al Khalil or Hebron when they walk around and they see, and they'll, think about this place and maybe consider going there as a tourist. Because believe it or not, as bad as it is for the Palestinians, the cities are actually pretty safe. Nobody goes there because they don't think it's safe, but like Bethlehem and Al Khalil and Eilat are generally really, really safe, but they're just ghost towns, and it broke my heart. So I'm trying to get the petition going, and everyone on the Al Khalil side is like, yep, we're ready to sign all the paperwork and make this happen. But I'm still trying to make inroads with the Anaheim City Council. I'm actually going to crash their meeting Tuesday next week and try to.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Hope none of them are listening in on this episode. Do you have links to that GoFundMe? Because I'll put it in the description. You could email
it's not about money. It's going to be about just
or any awareness,
papers.
so to get a petition going.
Yeah,
to help you out.
if
That's
you
what I
could make like a document or something and list all of the projects you have going on with like resource links.
Okay.
And the reason I say that is, and I told Kojay about this. In a week and a half, I'm actually going to DC through ISMPalestine. We're going to be going to talking to Congress. Essentially, we have different people from all over the country talking to their representatives in Congress about certain bills and things that we see going on, and talking, on behalf of like our constituents. So if there are people going from California, right, on this trip, I could very easily give them, the information for these projects, and we could potentially have something going. So I definitely think if you're able to get, just like an email document, whatever, doesn't have to have any of your personal information on it, but all these projects that we're working on, I would love to, give it to people that I volunteer with. I'm kind of the opposite of you guys. I don't go to enough protests. I really should. But I go to a lot of the lectures, the meetings. I work with a lot of different organizations. I am fortunately or unfortunately very, active on social media. And I think you never know when you're going to connect with different people who can help you, and you never know who you're able to help as well. So
Yeah.
I think with the project or the trip that I'm about to take, I'm sure I'm going to be connecting with a lot of people. And I know there's a multitude of people that are potentially coming from, California. If they're coming from your district, who knows, maybe we could have, make some magic happen.
Nice. Yeah. I mean, and I don't think they can trace like where signatures come from. So once the petition is really up and running, and I've written a better description, I'm waiting for help from my guy in the municipality in Al Khalil to flesh out some of the things. The petition is up and people can sign it, but I would like to write a better description for people to read. But even places like Dearborn, Michigan, or other areas of the country that have a concentrated Arab population, anybody I think can sign it. Because there's going to be people in Palestine signing it, and anybody who's got the solidarity can sign it. It's not restricted by geography. So yeah, I can definitely get you a document with all this stuff. Thank you for offering to do that, and I can probably do that within a day or two.
Yeah, Heena's awesome.
Yeah. Kojay and I are both connected to very different people. I mean, him and I also met on social media, you know what I mean? And a lot of the podcasts that I've helped co-host or, do interviews on, I'm meeting so many people on social media. And it's a beautiful thing because, when you look at what's going on, with like TV and news and the selfishness and the weird comments and the ignorance that we see, it's beautiful to see all these different people from all ages, backgrounds, all over the world really kind of coming together. And you see how different people are playing like their roles in the movement and the resistance and overcoming, the oppression. And I think you never know when you're going to get help for the projects that you have going on. And you never know when you're going to influence someone someone could be watching this podcast right now and be like, oh my gosh, I didn't even know that you could go to the West Bank, or I didn't even know you could volunteer X, Y, and Z. I didn't even know this project was going on. So,
Exactly.
you know, I'm humbled you came on, and I think there's an entire world out there on social media where a lot of the question marks that you have right now as to like, well, how am I going to do this and that? The puzzle pieces are out there. We just need to kind of help you find them.
Yeah. Well, you know, the years that I spent in the music industry, I had a nickname, Info Chick. Like if you know, if somebody came to me with, and this was back in the CD days, you know, they'd bring a record to me and I would listen to it and go, oh, I know the label you should pitch this to, or, you know, so-and-so, here's their manager and you kind of sound like them and you should try. So I am good at networking. It's just social media is not really my thing. Like I'm happy to talk to people. I'm happy to do, you know, like public speaking or sharing information. I just don't really do social media very well, which is, you know, I should.
Well, you know, like you were saying earlier, if I may jump in, sorry.
Sure.
You know, when you're saying about hiking, that's not your forte, you know, and I don't think I'm the most intelligent person out there, but I do have my own skill sets. So the fact that we could all work together and bring something to the table that the other doesn't have or excel in as much, you know, I'm not measuring or anything, but collectively as a team, you know, it's like we have a specialty here, a specialty here. We could all help each other because we're against a crazy empire, you know, that's rooted in a very violent, bloody foundation that we're trying to change and clean. So, you know, us all amplifying each other, helping each other out, bringing our skills to the table. It's like passing the baton, you know. I think, you know, we connect as people to each other. We can make anything happen, just like Heena, you're suggesting with reaching out in DC. All this is great. So, yeah, we can connect.
Inshallah. Yeah.
Hey.
Oh, but I would like to. You know, I could go on for another 3 hours, but I won't because I know it's midnight on the East Coast, and it's still a school night. But there is one more thing I'd like to circle back to and wrap up with, if that's okay.
Sure. I was going to give you the floor for anything you want to say and give to the world.
Well, first of all, are there any other questions you want to ask before I bring my point home? Anything? Okay.
No, I just want to hear what you're going to say next.
Okay. So going back to when we were, you know, you were saying that you feel helpless and does it really make a difference? And then I brought in the starfish thing. There are so many organizations out there where if you can't make the kind of journey that I did because you've got young children or maybe a physical disability that prevents you from traveling or being on your feet or, you know, whatever. If there's anything preventing you from doing the weird kind of stuff that I've done, or you don't have time for other reasons or whatever, there are so many agencies you can still make donations to. Now, sometimes getting the money to them in the West Bank is kind of convoluted because this is another thing that the occupation is doing to make Palestinians' lives miserable. They're not allowed to have PayPal or Zelle or Venmo. And getting money to these organizations on the ground in the West Bank can be tricky, but sometimes it's not. So Andrey X, he's somebody that actually, one of the things that I've seen on his Instagram and I think his regular website is you can donate to him so that he can keep doing his work and not have to get a job. So you can donate to Andrey X so that he can, you know, keep eating and fighting the good fight. The agencies that I've mentioned that I worked with, ISM, I believe they have a way to donate. And Andrey actually also plugs ISM specifically. And then the Hebron International Resource Network, they've been having problems getting money from point A to point B. And I can't go into details about it, but there's an agency in England called Amos Trust. Amos, the name, like AMOS. Amos Trust is where you can make donations that will get to Hebron International Resource Network. So there's things like that. There's another one called Community Peacemaker Teams. There's the Human Rights Defenders. There's Go Palestine. There's the Excellence Center. Those are all agencies that I crossed paths with while I was in Al Khalil. And if you go to, I can try to do the research and try to find all their URLs, or your viewers can also maybe Google.
That'd be great, because I'm making notes to look them all up for them.
Yeah. So those places, even if you can't be a physical presence, which, let me tell you, the privilege was entirely mine, and it will never be anything but. It was privilege to be able to live among these incredibly lovely people and to just share the beauty of their soul, their collective Palestinian soul. So entirely my privilege. But there are agencies that need money every day to make those care packages for the families who don't have food, or to get the school supplies for the kids, or what have you, whatever it might be. So yeah, I'll do my best to round those all up, because I've got about 7 or 8 that I can, somewhere in the neighborhood of 10, I would say, agencies.
Oh, that'd be
I'll
great.
Try to find for.
Put them all in, because people don't really realize how difficult the occupation makes it for the Palestinians, where all these little things really help tremendously.
They do. I mean, you wouldn't believe some of the stuff they cook up just to make their lives miserable. Like I mentioned before about like destruction of property and killing the sheep and beating people. But one of the things that the occupation has done, I kid you not, because they're so damn petty, they refuse to collect the garbage in the urban centers and take it outside, where, can you imagine in summer,
Yes.
they'll remove it from the streets, but they don't take it like away, and they just let the garbage pile up, and it's disgusting. And it's just to make the lives miserable,
Wow.
Yeah, no, I think you listing all these organizations is phenomenal. I think there's a multitude of people who want to help but don't know how. So I think, there's a lot of people with a lot of energy, a lot of money, a lot of passion, but they don't know quite how to utilize it. And I think that's why podcast episodes like these are important, because I think it kind of opens up this world of like, wait, look at all these things that you can do. If you can't go to a protest, if you can't go to DC, if you can't go to the West Bank, look at all these alternatives of all these projects, out there. The knowledge of these projects isn't as prominent as it should be. Like a lot of the things that you're discussing, I'll be candid, I haven't even heard of them. And I consider myself, so seasoned when it comes to both, Gaza and, the West Bank and different projects going on. And so many things you listed, I haven't heard of. And if I haven't heard of it, and I'm sure, Kojay hasn't heard of it, imagine all the people who are just kind of coming into conceptualizing Palestine and learning about it and want to advocate for it. So I think sharing this, it's honestly building a lot of bridges.
Yeah. And the one thing that it just, for me, that it keeps coming back to, and I wish I could scream it from every mountaintop and make people believe it on top of it, because the Zionists never will. But again, the fact that the Palestinians don't have a burning hatred in their hearts for their oppressors. They just want their freedom. They just want to be treated like humans again and to have what is rightfully theirs. They don't want revenge. That's a term that I've never understood with this whole thing. 77 years is like revenge for what? And the Palestinians just aren't that way. They're so gracious, and they're just really a beautiful people.
That's one of the things that empowered me to get out in the streets, is when I found out what they wanted. I forgot the exact who said it and to me, and when I witnessed this, but it was essentially they just want equal rights.
Yeah.
And I was like, how does that threaten anyone? Because one of the pushbacks I got when I first started being actively an activist for the Palestinian people's equal rights and freedom was they assumed that for Palestinians to be free, the Palestinians would want to slaughter all the Israelis, and I was like, no, that's not wrong. That's totally wrong. I mean, that's not so. What they want is just freedom.
Yeah.
Go home, their homeland. You know, the whole point is like genocide is wrong on anyone. I don't understand. I still to this day don't understand how that's difficult for people to understand. That it's not. It's like the bad ways aren't even an answer for anyone, even the oppressed. People just want to be free, live in their homeland, and you know, the pursuit of happiness, the stuff that I thought that, you know, America stood for. But I don't know, maybe we have to re-understand that.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people are kind of learning that America is not exactly the good guy. I think a lot of people are in a lot of shock, you know. So.
No, I believe the American people are good. I don't think our government's the good guys at all. ISIS is pretty much IDF. You see how they're doing and shooting priests in the head in Chicago. It's like, whoa.
Yeah.
Another podcast, by the way. So, Heena, do you have any questions for Gigi?
No, I don't. I'm just really humbled and glad that, you know, I was given the opportunity to interview you and ask you questions and learn about everything that's going on. And, you know, I just wanted to also extend my gratitude for all the work that you've done. I know you're an extremely humble person, but I think if stories like yours and voices like yours were amplified a lot more in the mainstream, I do genuinely think the culture that we live in would be vastly different. So thank you so much for coming on and giving me this opportunity.
Thank you for the opportunity because, again, free Palestine. That's all it comes down to. Both as a command and a description.
Yes, absolutely.
There we go. Free Palestine. And is there anything you want to give to the audience watching and listening? Any last thing, Gigi?
Just do whatever you can in whatever capacity you can. And if you're not sure what that is, reach out to an organization on social media and learn, you know, find out what can I do. Maybe you've got limitations, but there's always something you can do. So that would just be my encouragement, is find what it is you can do and do it, because those beautiful people 10 time zones away, well, 10 time zones for us, only 7 for you, you know, they are grateful for every heart that believes in who they are.
That's beautiful. All right. Well, thank you so much for being on here. And this is a long time in the making, but I think everything happened the way it was supposed to be, especially with Heena here. And I can't thank you enough. So to everyone, much love. God bless. Free Palestine. And let's start throwing starfish back in the ocean.
I like that. Have a good night, you guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great night, everyone.